Hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. It is a free and easy way to support the channel and to help out my algorithm. It might be a mixture of arrogance. It could be simple misunderstanding, which often does come into play. I think a lot of times when we hear things about the cryptocurrency space, or at least when I hear about them, I tend to assume that a lot of it is actual arrogance and people folding their arms and going, well, that's just the way that things are going to be. When I first got into the cryptocurrency market years ago, I took about, once again, 2 or 3 years to actually research it because I didn't know what this thing was. By around 2015, 2016, before I started the other channel, I remember reading, price predictions have always been a major part of the cryptocurrency space and where things are going to be and how things are going to happen, especially with Bitcoin. I remember hearing that someone proposed, as Bitcoin was around $600, $700, $800, that Bitcoin was going to $1 million. And I remember sitting there thinking that sounds insane. I wasn't thinking about market cap. I wasn't thinking about, metrics or how usage. It was simply the idea of something that wasn't $1,000 going to over $1 million. You'll normally hear, let's say there's an asset or an item that is $55. Usually you'll see someone on an auction TV show or Antiques Roadshow or whatever, and they'll bring it in and they say, I got this for 55 years ago. And the person will go, you know what? The valuation of this thing is probably around $1,500. You're usually hard pressed for someone to say, yeah, we bought it for 800, 20 something years ago, for the person to go, this is worth over $1 million. Just this one right here. It's not usually going to happen. I remember hearing someone even say that in the future, if everything converted to Bitcoin, that is to say the M1, the M2, the M3 money supply, all forms of debt, corporations, governments, everything is just running on Bitcoin everywhere you go. Everything you see is just priced in Bitcoin and Satoshis. They said that they could even foresee the idea of in the 2060s, 2070s, or 2080s of Bitcoin being $100 million per coin. That one really, I was like, okay, super far-fetched, but maybe there's something to it. Another part of this, and it didn't drive me insane until I realized what was happening in this space. A huge portion of my annoyance for many years, if you were watching the earlier videos from years and years and years ago, was every single time that Bitcoin would go to $15,000, there was always someone, somewhere, whether it be Peter Schiff or Jaime Dimon, who kept on saying, Bitcoin is worth 0. And I remember thinking that these people were actually serious as opposed to realizing that they're just interesting people in their own right. They know that Bitcoin's worth more than 0 because Bitcoin transacts trillions of US dollars worth of value every single year. You can't have something that runs 24 hours a day transacting trillions of dollars and has no value. It took me the point of this story is it took me a while to realize that these people, A, have no idea what they're talking about, B, are extremely arrogant in some sort of way, or C, maybe they just simply didn't actually know. The really weird part is that, you know how I always say, when we get news, it's clear that the richer people have that same news, but in another fashion. If we hear that BlackRock is buying, the rich people behind the scenes, they really know what's going on and how much is buying, how much is being bought through other companies and shell companies and subsidiaries, how much is being locked away. We get this kind of trickle down kind of news. One of the things that makes me, and I don't want to say upset, that sounds like a little bit too intense, has been over the years this idea of just kind of blatantly lying to people. So hearing Warren Buffett tell people that Bitcoin has no value when Bitcoin clearly has value, even just as a network by itself that runs 24 hours a day. Bitcoin isn't worth $1 per coin. It's not worth $1 million per coin. It's worth way more than that because it is a system that doesn't rely on governments. It runs 24 hours a day and is usable by 8 billion people by default. I found an article. I don't know what I was looking for actually. I don't remember it anymore. But I stumbled upon, I saw the title and I scrolled past and didn't care. And I was like, no, wait. There's no way that someone actually said that. This guy's name is Kenneth Rogoff, Rogoff. He was a Harvard University professor. When I first began to do these videos, especially the other channel, The Modern Investor, there was you must remember, in the early days, I was so angry because people kept on releasing things like this. I realize now it's just because I think a lot of these people didn't want other people to actually be in this space. They wanted their feelings and their emotions to be validated. If you've been told your entire life that rocks are a currency, you believe that rocks are a currency. If we've been told our entire lives that a green piece of paper with dye on it is money, we're going to believe that it's money. If someone tells you otherwise, you become apprehensive. Remember I told you, old story, I had a friend who was really into World of Warcraft years ago. I'm talking about 2004, 5, 6, 7, somewhere around that time frame. And I remember him telling me that he was going around fighting all these monsters and things like that. And he was making gold inside the game, and he could use that gold to like swap into US. He was like selling the things that he was doing within the game, and I was like, that is the craziest thing. I remember making fun of him. I can admit it. I made fun of him because I was like, no, money's paper. Money's on a check. Money is on a dollar. I need to hold it in my actual hand and pass it to someone. So when I first heard about Bitcoin, I was like, that sounds insane. There's no way that could possibly be true. And this is why I say it from this vantage point. A lot of years later, whenever we began to hear that Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett or people within their 60s, 70s, and 80s sometimes were like bad talking Bitcoin, I didn't get angry anymore because I realized that there was a hyper disconnect from what they believe and what they actually understand. Tell me if this is you. Tell me if this is you as well, because this is me. I grew up in a generation of like the end tail of cassette tapes. And the cassette tapes turned into CDs and CDs turned into iPods. I have a lot of friends now who care nothing about actually owning their actual music. So they only use Spotify and other websites and platforms. They don't own any of the files. By the time I was 11, 12, 13, owning your files was already like a thing. Like it was just like easing out of like the entire CD kind of thing. And it was this idea that like even now, I'll shorten it. Even now, like I have to have my files downloaded so that I know that I own something. But there's another generation that doesn't want it at all. I have a lot of friends who only want to rent stuff. So they rent, this isn't a joke, they rent their TVs, they rent their couches, there's no idea that they need to own something. If they're able to rent in a couple of years, if they get sick of it, they can kind of move it on. I want to own my couch. I want to own my apartment. I want to own what I actually have. Got a bit off tangent, but it has to do with this idea of if you're told one thing, you usually can't conceptualize another. Bitcoin is a very big learning curve. You have to learn what inflation is. You have to learn what money is. You have to learn about manipulation. You have to learn about like the Bretton Woods. You have to learn about all these different things to figure out that like the system is kind of controlled by a small amount of people. Back in 2018, there was a Harvard University professor who was asked about Bitcoin. Was Bitcoin good? Was Bitcoin going to make it? What do you think about the valuation of Bitcoin? Someone proposed to him and said, in 2028, They expected Bitcoin's price to at least be $100,000. That's the first weird part. They said in 10 years, 2028, Bitcoin's going to be $100,000. What do you think? And this professor said no. He said the reality actually is that the likelihood is that Bitcoin is going to fall to $100. And that likelihood is much greater than Bitcoin ever getting to $100,000 per coin. I think it's funny now to read something like that to realize just how wrong that he could have been. Like, imagine right now, with all the adoption, and I mean even before we even cue any of that in, that Bitcoin's price could be $100 per coin. Bitcoin, even if we didn't have all this institutional support and adoption, we'd probably be around a good $16, $17, $18, $21, $24,000 just off the back of like actual buying and the hype of the actual having. Current discussions for this year are Bitcoin going to $250,000 to $500,000. I don't know if this guy is still active or still talking negatively, whatever, about Bitcoin. But a lot of times when people are asked about these things that they said before, they usually go, yeah, well, I still don't trust it in Bitcoin's going to 1,000. And it's like, okay. Bitcoin transacts 24 hours a day, trillions of dollars through its system alone. This is why you keep seeing Visa and MasterCard trying to get in as quickly as they possibly can, because in essence, the world doesn't need them. We can just use Bitcoin. And I dare say with my pinky raised, also using the Lightning Network to actually have instantaneous, near free transactions. The idea of Bitcoin now being only worth $100 has to, and the funny part is that it's coming from a university professor in Harvard. Hearing all these people from years ago, and I remember, once again, I remember being angry because I thought that their words held some kind of meaning. University professor, the guy who runs this company, this guy runs this bank, and I was like, not what if they're right, but it was more of a, what if I'm wrong? If that makes any sense. I didn't care what they said, but it was more like, what if I'm not paying attention? So you'll notice a lot of times in a bunch of other videos, I used to always say, even during a bear market, pay attention to the metrics. The price might be down 80%, boo-hoo, terrible. How many new people are still making addresses per day? Is Bitcoin still transacting? Every single quarter, is it transacting over $4 trillion just on the blockchain? How many new companies do we keep hearing daily are getting into Bitcoin? How much more is being bought? And all these things add up to us getting back to a $100,000 Bitcoin. Bit of a different video, but I really thought that this was like funny. If you look at any of the other price predictions from all these people, especially Jaime Dimon, who's the head of the JP Morgan, he said years ago, he was like, no, Bitcoin's not going to make it. He was the one who coined the phrase blockchain, not Bitcoin. He was like, no one's going to want to use Bitcoin. And now we have governments buying Bitcoin. Now we have sovereign wealth funds buying Bitcoin. Now we have 5 companies that we know about, 2 of which are nearing 1 million Bitcoin. The other 3 who've all just popped up, who are also aspirationally trying to acquire hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin each. But Bitcoin's only worth $100. No one's going to use it. When you look at or think about what the future is going to be, and I've said this a lot of times, but if I don't repeat it, I'm afraid of people forgetting it. Bitcoin's going to win. Bitcoin has already won, actually. Bitcoin's going to several $1 million per coin. And I need everyone to really understand why. And the way they usually figure this out is by looking at the past. It's by looking at the mistakes. It's by looking at the things that these people said about Bitcoin and just realizing how wrong that they were. It's last point. I said this years ago as well when I was talking about all the institutions coming into the space. I said they're going to raise our prices, but we don't need them. The idea is constantly that we need these rich people. We need this money to like save us, to bring our market up. The market's not for them or about them. It's about us. We have to save ourselves. You know that the governments aren't going to save you, and people still try to lean on them and go, please help me. I need all the help that you could possibly give me. No, we would do just fine if all these companies weren't here. It would take us longer to move up in price. But even then, if you look at where we are now, they're buying all the Bitcoin. There's a reason for it. So always keep that in mind. We've already won, and the future is probably, more than likely, as far as we know, going to revolve heavily around Bitcoin as a system. Please make sure, if you want to be, that you are a part of this and not simply standing on the sidelines, because I do not want to hear anyone complaining. We get this news every day. When Bitcoin goes to $1 million, please complain to yourself and to no one else because you knew that this was going to happen to the price. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed. Hope you all are having a great day. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.